Hello everyone, today I'm going to be working with some paste and I'm going to try and do some texture paste that involves sand and other products that are really useful for mixed media projects, and also you can use on your scrapbook layout. In particular, I'm going to show you how to use them with stencils. So we're just going to try a few different techniques of making our own. As most of you probably know, generally when you buy texture pastes that have grit, sand, etc. in them, they can be quite expensive and tend to just come in very small jars at quite a high price. And like most of you, I'm always looking for ways to make my own. Now, as an art teacher and artist, over the years, there's been many times where I've created my own mixed media paste to use on large canvases. And really, if you're applying it to scrapbooking or you're applying it to mixed media projects, small crafty ones, the techniques are exactly the same. So today I'm going to show you the process of actually mixing the paste and then using it and applying to cardstock, and coming up with quicker processes and mediums that will dry quicker so we can work faster and get things done. I'm going to be using a few different stencils. I've got this one of the world map, some Halloween bats here from Opaque. This one I think is a Kaisercraft one. It's just a lovely texture, lots of dots and texture happening there. There's a bit of text through that one as well. This is the new one that I just purchased, which happens to have a partial rock wall. And I thought that would be perfect for some sandy texture paste. And then this one, large 12 by 12 one, which is from Kaisercraft. Always fun to have some polka dots happening, so I'm going to give it a go with that one as well. So let's get started. I'm going to just use some white cardstock offcuts to do samples, and I'll do a couple of samples on coloured cardstock. Right, so a lot of people at the moment are buying Tim Holtz's Distress Grit Paste. I bought this one because I was really interested in finding out what it actually was. So this is the Crypt grit paste. He also has a translucent and an opaque one as well. Let me just open it and show you what it looks like. So this one is obviously coloured and made to look more like tombstones, you know, scary stuff that you might use for Halloween. I think it would probably work quite well if you were trying to use it as bit of mold growing on something, anything that you want to grunge up, really. If I feel the texture of it, it is very much, feels like when you rub it between your fingers, like very fine sandpaper. The grit in it is very, very fine, and the granules in it are very fine. Now, I can't tell you what he's used to create his paste, but I'm going to show you a couple of things and different ways that you might create some of yours. Now, when my children were young, my boys in particular were into Warhammer modelling. I don't know if you'll know what that is, but basically it's Warhammer's a warring game where you have little characters that you paint up and you play, and part of it is you have a big table set up and you have to make scenery for the little characters to move around throughout the game. My boys were into it big time. I've still got huge collections of all their Warhammer supplies and scenery and everything else that goes with it, all the models, all the paints and that, in one of the wardrobes packed away. So I've been doing this, making sandy textured paste for a long time. My kids were into that when they were like between the ages of 8 and 12, and they're now 30. So, you know, I've been playing with it for a long time. And then, of course, I use the same techniques in my mixed media large canvas works that I used to do. 10 years ago, in particular, I went through a whole period where I was incorporating a lot of mixed media into my artworks. And this creating your own texture paste was high up on the list of what I used to do. So I have some experience with this. And this is my problem with when, you know, we're asked to pay such a lot of money for these little jars of paste, because I know there's lots of ways you can make your own. Even though Tim Holtz products, fabulous. Go and buy them if you can afford them. But if you need larger quantities, there may be better ways of creating your own. Okay, so there's a couple of things we're going to do. First one, now I've got grip paste all over my fingers. The first one is we're going to have a go using the old standard Impasto Gel Medium. Now, if you've watched my video about making your own glazes, I've used this in the glaze making process where we were trying to recreate some glaze effects. You can go and watch that if you're interested in that. So the gel medium is transparent when it dries. So this, if you're going to use this to create your texture paste or sandy, whether it be sandy or gritty or a mix of both, you need to realize that if you're using this as a base, it is going to be transparent when it dries, which can be really useful. If you're doing a layout that's a beach layout, you may want just to have that natural looking sand. If you want to color your own or create an effect that is slightly more transparent, perhaps you want to create it so it looks like sand underwater, and you could add some blue colored media to it, some ink or dye or stain. This could be perfect for that look. So let's have a little play with it and we'll see what we end up with. All right, so first I'm just going to mix some of it with some sand. And the sand that I've got, look at this. This is my old, sorry about this. This is my old feta container full of sand. This sand has literally just come out of my paddock. You can see that there is really, really fine sand in there. And then if I shake it up, I can get some more textured bits in there. This sand has been washed several times, and it has also been sieved several times, which is how you get this beautiful, soft, silky sand. There are a few stones and that in here, but that's from me doing previous artworks and they've fallen into the bucket. Most of it is just beautiful, soft sand with very little contaminants in there. And that's all you really need. So you could get yourself some white sand. You could get yourself some yellow sand. This one is a bit of a mix of both, which is why it's so pale. Any type of sand will do. Go to the beach, grab a cup of sand, take it home, wash it out, dry it out, strain it through different sieves, and you're ending up with your grit texture that you need to make your texture paste. You can, of course, buy sand as well, but, you know, I'm all about saving money. Okay, here is our sand. I'm using my trusty lid again, and I'm going to use another palette knife to add the gel paste to it. Now, if we just add it straight in there like this, what we're going to end up with is a paste that will dry translucent, and so the only thing that you should really notice is the sand. Now it can be a bit tricky when you're starting off to get it mixed together. If you need to, you can add a little bit of water. Look at that. Oh, it feels and sounds lovely. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound, but can you hear that in there when I push down? Lovely. Look at that. People pay a fortune for what we've just made there in a couple of seconds. All right. Look at it. It is lovely. Look at that. Just going to mix it all in there. All right. So sample number 1 is here already. And it's taken us literally 60 seconds. Amazing. And there we have it. Now, if I'm looking at Mr. Holtz's grit paste, it's pretty similar. The only difference is the colour. He has a few flecks in his paste, a few grits that are like a black colour, a charcoaly colour in there. But texture-wise, it's very similar. So, being a gel medium, it will, of course, take a little while to dry. You probably will need to leave it overnight. And especially if you're putting it on thickly. With the Tim Holtz textured grit paste, and with other brands of textured grit paste, you are usually told to leave it overnight, sometimes 24 hours. It depends on what. Actually, where's my big piece? Here we go. I'm going to do a big sample sheet for us so we can write underneath what it is. So, right, straight up, there we go. That is what we're getting. Look at that. Can you see that? Beautiful. So lovely texture there. You can have it really thick if you want it. I'm not going to put it on too thickly today because I do want to see if we can dry it a bit quicker. Oh, it sounds amazing. Listen to that. All right, so there's our first sample. So that is just the sand with the gel medium. I'm going to use one of the stencils now, and I think I'll just do like a tag size one here. Let me just grab a stencil. All right, okay, so I think we'll just try this one, which was the, what did I say it was? Kaisercraft one. I'm not sure the name of the actual stencil, but it is an old Kaisercraft one. I'm going to put some of this over the top. Ooh, it's so scratchy. Look at that. Smooth it out like you would with any stenciling. Noisy and messy. Oops, I've got a bit of dried gel there. That must have been in the pot. Put a bit more over here. Now, I'm not trying to cover the whole area. I'm just doing some of the area. Oh, I love it. Now, you can smooth it out or you can leave it a bit lumpy bumpy. I'll pull that off. Oh, there we go. Look at that. That is going to be so fun to use when it's dried. Gorgeous. All right, I just realised I should have put a mark on the card so we don't get them muddled up. So on the back of this, just going to put number 1. That is our number 1. Next time I'll write it on there before we start. Okay, so that's sample number 1. Okay, I'm back. So I've washed off my stencil and now I'm going to use this bit that we made up here and I'm going to change it slightly. So remembering that we've just got the gel medium in here and straight sand, but I'm thinking I'm going to add a little bit of colour to it and see if we can get a similar texture to this one. Now I haven't actually tried the grit paste, so I'm not sure if this particular one is going to dry very transparent. I feel that it's more an opaque one, but I'm going to try adding some colour to the transparent gel anyway and just see what we get from that. So I'm thinking I will just add some sort of blue. Right, I couldn't decide what I was going to try with it, but I think we're going to go with some of this Dylusion ink spray. And what is the colour here? It is turquoise. Oh, vibrant turquoise. So that's giving us a bit of a warning that perhaps if we're going to use it, we just want a real small amount. Now what I'm thinking is when this dries, that it may be quite a nice sort of underwater look to it. I am not trying to make at the moment a grit paste colour. We'll try that later with something else, but I'm just trying to get a bit of colour in there. Oh, mind you, it's looking not bad. I think I'm going to make it more turquoise though, just for the fun of it, hey. Oh, so pretty. And it is very vibrant, isn't it? If you're using this turquoise, vibrant turquoise spray from the Dylusions range, a little goes a long way. Look at that colour, gorgeous. That is gorgeous. All right, how pretty is that? So when it dries, it should be much like our glazes. Let me just remind you about those. Where have I got something with glaze on it? Here we go. So this is this gel medium is what I use to make the glazes here. So I'm thinking we're going to get a similar effect to this, only with that sand through it. So it'll be quite textural. Okay. Let's go. Oh, we better put a little bit on our sample sheet here. So new sample for us. Interesting to see what it looks like. I'll put that aside and I'm going to go bigger this time. I'm going to try this with a 6x4 sheet of card. And I think we'll use our big Kaisercraft circles, just because I'm feeling that perhaps this will turn into something water-based, you know, with a water theme or a sea theme or something. Let's put some circles of this over the top. Woohoo! This is fun. I love it. It's fun to put on. So sandy. Now, once again, I'm not trying to cover the whole thing. It'll be more interesting if we just have areas where the paste is. Even though I do want some to be solid circles. Ugh. Fun and games. Okay, so one of the things you can do is if you've only got a clear gel medium at home and you do want to make something a bit more opaque, there's a couple of ways you can do that. So one of the things you can use is by adding a powder substance. there are several different types of things you can do. So I've got here some tapioca flour. You can add that in. And what it will do is, obviously, because it's white and it's a fine powder, it's going to make the gel that you've used not as transparent. I suspect that the grit paste is made in a similar fashion, not with tapioca flour obviously, but that it has a powdered base of some type, so it's not as transparent. So when you add anything else to it, it is going to perhaps change the color slightly, because you're adding a white substance to it. It's going to lighten your gel. Now it's getting quite thick now because I've added the powder in there, so I can just add, if yours gets too thick, you can just add a little bit of water to it and it will be a bit easier to mix and handle. Alright, so now I've put some tapioca powder in there. You could use plaster, is the most common thing used by mixed media artists. Plaster of Paris, add some of that in. Plaster of Paris is also used as a good way to make your own gesso, mixed with some other substances as well. You can use corn flour, which is very similar to tapioca flour, which I'm using here. You could probably use some baby powder if you've got some of that in your house. It just needs to be a fine white powder. All right, I'm going to put some of this on here for our third sample on this sheet here. Now you can see a difference already between them. The camera might not show it, but the color is just slightly different to what we had in the other one. And there is a definite difference in the opacity of the gel. So that's just the cheats way of, if you've only got this, it's a way of making it more opaque if you want it more solid and not as translucent. Let's pop that aside and I'll get another piece of card. And we'll use up this last little bit here before we move on to the next bit. What shall I use it with? Oh look, I might go with some more, another one of these, because I really like this stencil. It's a bit interesting, and it's not going to be able to use all of this on there. Ooh, got to hold it flat. I'm going to scrape every bit I can off here, because it's all useful. You can use it all. Don't waste anything. This is why I like making things in small quantities. You can use it all up. You could end up with several bits of card that you can use for tags and things. You can just make how much you need, or you can make a whole heap and enough to do 10 tags or 5 layouts. Just make enough. And then you've got no wastage, because one of the problems that we're finding with buying all the pastes, as lovely as they are, whether they're texture pastes or modeling pastes or whatever they are, many of them, unfortunately, do not last that long once they're open. They will dry out in some cases. That is certainly what I've found with some of the ones that are sold as scrapbook and crafting substances. They dry very quickly. So there's our one where we've turned it into a more opaque textured sand based paste. All right, now just a bit of cleanup and I'll be back with the next technique. All right, I'm back again. So this time we are going to try making another clear textured paste with a sand base. It's just using a different type of media. So what we're going to use, and first we'll get our sand on here. So I'll just grab a bit more sand, pop that on my little dish. Just going to make about the same amount. And because I'm just showing you samples in this case. Okay, so I'll just move that little lump of something there. Right, so what we're going to use, probably the easiest thing and thing which most people would have at home, is some PVA glue. Look how old this is. It's very old. Craft PVA glue, water-based adhesive. You'll all have some of this, I'm sure. Hopefully I can get it open. So it's very old. Clearly I don't use PVA very often. Oh dear. There we go. Got it. All right. So there would be an advantage of using the PVA in the fact that if you're just after a translucent texture paste that dries translucent, and look at this one with our gel. I hit that with the heat gun and it's almost completely dry already. And look at that beautiful beach sand look there happening. So the PVA should do the same thing. There may be a little bit of difference in the look of it because PVA can sometimes, and it depends on which brand it is, can sometimes be a little bit shiny. Okay, so we'll see what we get. It may dry matte, but some of them can be a bit shiny. But how easy is this? A little bit of glue and a little bit of sand, and you're getting the same effect as if you were buying a sand or a grit translucent texture paste, just using a bit of PVA and sand. Now, if you want to, you can add a bit of water. If you feel you need to add some water to it. Last time we just put a little spray of water in our paste. But this looks okay because the PVA is, my PVA anyway, is much thinner, wetter than the impasto gel that I have. So there we go. That took like 30 seconds and we've got our own translucent texture paste. So let's put it on our sample sheet. I think this one mixed a lot easier than the last one did. I'm going to put it underneath this one. Yeah, so that's a simple, super easy method to get the same effect as if you would from buying a grit or a sand translucent texture paste. You'll see when it dries that it looks much the same. Perfect for if you're doing a beach layout and want some sand effect on it. So let's try it with on a piece of cardstock. I think I'll go with a 6x4 this time, and I'm thinking that I might try the rock wall stencil, which I just got recently. I haven't actually bought any stencils from this brand before, which is Bee Arty. Oh, the quality is really nice and nice and thick. Stencils are nice and thick. This one, does it have the name of it on here? Yes, it does, right here. This stencil, if you're interested, is called Destination Anywhere Pavement A4 Stencil. Okay. I think it might be great for this particular mix because we'll get that nice rocky look. I'll hold it down. It's going to be a great fake wall. Beautiful. PVA, sand. There we go. No jar of texture paste needed. Fabulous. Okay, going to wash it up and then we'll look at another one. Okay, so we just did the PVA glue and the sand. It's drying much the same as our first one with the gel medium. In fact, once it's dry, I doubt you'll be able to tell any difference. If you were going to go with the PVA and the sand, you could do what we did here. You could add any type of ink dye to stain your sand and stain the medium, or you could make it more opaque by adding any type of white powder basically to it as well. The same thing would happen. You'd get the same sorts of results for those techniques, adding powder or adding color to the PVA and the sand mix. All right, so now we're going to have a go making opaque sandy texture paste. And I'm going to show you with a couple of different methods. One does involve PVA and one does involve some paint. So let's have a look at that. So first one I'm going to do is with our sand again. Oh, I love just putting my hands in this. It's beautiful. It's so soft. Putting the sand in. My precise measuring here, not at all. Just grab however much you feel you're going to need. So there's our sand. And then for this one, we're going to add some paint. So I'm just using some white acrylic paint. This is more of a artist acrylic, professional artist acrylic paint. You could use any white acrylic paint, would be fine. Cheapo stuff would be perfectly fine. This is probably a little bit thicker than some of your cheap crafty brands, but it will do. Anything that's white acrylic will do the job. So I'm going to add some of that. Now, so the white paint really just acts more like the powder did. It's just a substitute for that, really. So we use some of that paint. We use our sand. And then we use some PVA. Oh, I've glued it shut. There we go, got it. All right, so then we use some PVA as well to that. Doesn't need much, just a little dribble. I probably put 1.5 teaspoons in then, if you really want to worry about measurements. Now, because I'm using the paint, it may be more difficult to mix. So you probably would like, you know, add a tiny bit of water just to loosen it up a bit. Now this will be opaque when it dries, not see-through at all, because obviously we're using the white paint, and the white paint is very solidly opaque. Light does not travel through it. Look at that. Oh, it's looking lovely. I do like it. It's got a beautiful texture. So what it's looking a bit like is stucco. Is that what you call it in the US? Stucco? Plastering stucco. There we go. Looks pretty good. So when you buy opaque sand texture paste or grit texture paste, you buy something very similar to this. A white textured gritty substance. It may have white sand or texture of some type in it. The textures can sometimes be not sand based. sometimes they will use, surprisingly, fine beans, as in like dried beans, which are ground up. And if you have lots of dried beans at your house and you feel like grinding them up and sifting them and that, they would probably work as well. I think probably the only concern is that should it happen to get damp at some point after it's dried and that, even though I don't know if it would, but perhaps if you did use the dried beans or peas of some kind, it may swell perhaps, which of course shouldn't really happen with the sand. All right. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at it. Gorgeous. All right, let's put it on our sheet here. So nice. So I'm going to put it straight under this one. Now it is white, of course, and I purposely made it white. You could, of course, if you want a whole pile of black textured sand paste, you would use black paint if you wanted to color it. You could you could choose any color acrylic paint and make it from scratch like that. Let's bring it up to the camera. Can you see that? Very nice, very textured. Right, let's put some, let's use some with a stencil. So I'm thinking we may use, I'll use the world map this time. Get a piece of cardstock. Will it fit on there? No, needs bigger. So we'll go with our 6x4. Oh, actually, I might put it up there. Now, I'm just thinking I might put some other paste along there. So I might actually tape it into place this time with a bit of washi, just to hold it for us a bit better. All right, let's go. Putting on, oh, it's so nice. It's really lovely. Putting on our texture paste. Now, this, of course, is a map of the world. So if you wanted to get really fancy, you could make it really thick, so your countries are really standing up high. You could mess around and get really fancy and make it really, what would you call it? Really textured, if you wanted to, with some mountains on there even, by simply changing how you're applying the paste. This probably would be really good for snow as well. You could easily get it looking more snow-like. Okay, I've put it on quite thick, so we'll have to see how it looks. Pull that up. Ah, look at that. It's really, really gone on there well. Look at that texture. Can you see how thick it is? Not sure what you'll see, but that's great. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the weather has gone crazy here. It is just pouring down. All right, so just a reminder here that this one is the white acrylic paint, some PVA and some sand. So I'm going to split this up now, and I'm going to try adding some other things to it to see if we can change it slightly. I'm going to pull some of it over onto here. Once again, I'm just using a little lid. Just use whatever you've got. Washes up easy. It's just a takeaway lid in this case. I'm going to pull that in together. So we've pop that over there. Okay, so we've got some of our white acrylic sandy texture paste, and you can see here that it is drying. I feel that it probably will need to dry overnight. The first one is quite dry already, but I did hit it with the heat gun a bit. This one I haven't hit with the heat gun, and it is still a bit damp, and this is the one we just did. So let's try changing the color of this one. So I'm going to give it a go, adding some ink into it this time, but trying to make it a bit more like this sort of color. So if we look at our grit paste here, it's kind of a greeny gray. So can we replicate that? Right, so I'm thinking if we put a bit of black ink in to turn it grey to start with, and then we add some other colours, it should work. Okay, now as you can see, my texture paste has gone really thin, and the reason that's happened is I added some drawing ink, probably about half a teaspoon of this drawing ink, which is called Carbon Black. I also put in a couple of drops of sepia ink, and that was just to cool down the well, to warm up the grey, really, because it looked to me with the Carbon Black to be too cool, the grey, and I just wanted it to take the edge off a bit and move it towards the brown side. So I've put a bit of sepia in, but because I put so much ink, we've got this runniness happening, but it's okay, we can fix that. Having said that, I'm going to add some more sepia ink because it's not quite where I want it to be. Right, so once again, let's have a look at Tim Holtz's grit paste. Now it has a slight greenish tinge to it, so to get a greenish tinge, we're going to put a tiny little bit of blue in. When I say tiny, I mean tiny. So this is just ordinary water-based ink here. I'm just going to literally drop in if I can get it to drop. 2 splotches there. Always testing first that I don't get too much. So that hasn't really made a difference. I am going to spritz. Oh, come on, spritz, please. Oh, it doesn't want to work. Why does that always happen when you need it to work? Now, of course, if we're after more of a greeny grey, we don't just need blue, we need a bit of yellow in there as well. Bit more blue, it's not very strong, this. I'm going bluing it up some more. I need a little bit of yellow. Now I've got my brilliant yellow here. That is just the food dye. You can use dye or ink. This is going to be tricky. Don't do this at home. Measure would probably be better. All right, one little dribble. Oh, super strong. It is turning green, but we need to mix it up more. Do not want to knock that over. Pop it over there. Ooh. Gonna put a squirt of blue again. Just a little bit. Bit more, not quite right. So we are getting a greeny colour. Not sure that it's just what we want though. This now is looking much grayer than ours and not so green. It's a bit of hit and miss, isn't it? I'm going to throw in a bit of sepia, pull it back again. And it's got very runny. I think that's better. It's a greeny grey. Not as green as it was now. I think that'll do us. Okay, now because it got so runny, I'm going to put some more sand in there. Which will help with that. But also, we might add our magic ingredient. So anyone that has watched my other videos will know. Oh, look at that. Just a bit of sand's fixed it in itself. Oh, we might not need the magic ingredient. If anything that you do does get too thin and wet, there is this amazing product which I have shown in my other videos called Viscosity Thickener by Dylusions, and it basically thickens anything that's water based, and it's super strong. You just need the tiniest amount, as in only a couple of drops. So it lasts you just forever because it's really strong, and you just need the tiniest amount. Get that sealed up properly. All right, you'll see just mixing that in that it very quickly thickens anything. So you can make any texture paste you want with that product, and I'll show you that in my first video about how to make texture paste using different products. Look, so now we've got beautiful grey gritty grit paste. Ours is a bit greener. You know, that's just a matter of getting your inks right. It's an experiment, we're just testing here, so it's not going to be exact because we're playing. All right, we're going to put some of this. Oh, I'll put it next to this one. It's very thick. It's very concretey. And we need to, I'm just going to spray a bit of water on our other paste up here so it doesn't dry out too much. We're going to put it through something. Let's try the brick wall one again. All right, so let's make our brick wall. So I'm thinking what I'll do is work that way. Yeah, maybe. No. Not that way. Oh yeah, that'll work. I'll just go that way. It'll work upside down. And it's purely because of camera purposes here. I need to make sure that you can see what's happening and not be working in the way. So if I put it upside down, like so, it should be good. Now I'm going to tape it again because I feel that it may move. We're working with something really thick, so it can move it a little bit with the pressure of the thickness of our paste. And here we go. Our fake Crypt paste. Oh my gosh, it's like cementing. Amazing. It feels like cement and it looks very like cement. And it is thick. Wow. It's great. All right, let's just quickly review what we've got. So we've got our gel medium sandy texture paste. This one we added Dylusions ink spray to. This one we added our tapioca powder to make it more opaque. This one is just straight PVA. Oh, still a bit wet, sorry. Straight PVA with sand, giving you much the same effect. You've got that translucent effect, perfect for when you want a beach look. This one is our white acrylic paint and PVA and sand. And this one was our attempt at trying to come up with a colour similar to the grit paste. Now, having said that, ours is much darker. But I'm sure with some playing around, you could come up with something that's very similar. I'm just going to put some of the grit paste underneath here so we can check out the texture. Now you will notice that, as I said before, there's little specks of black in the text paste, in the grit paste, sorry. And it's slightly translucent here, so it is different to what we made here. This is very opaque because we use the white acrylic paste. So perhaps what we should be using is more like this, a gel medium with some sand and also a little bit of white powder of some kind to get a similar look to this. Of course, with the grit paste, it's made as a medium where you add colour, so you can change it to whatever colour you want, just like you can with the other grit pastes that are available and on the market. As for the little black dots, the only way I can think of that you could possibly, if you really had to have those little black dots in there, the only thing I can think of that you could possibly do is try some grated charcoal might work. Or you could go to the trouble of buying black sand or cleaning your sand to make it black, or dyeing your sand. Hi everyone. Well, I just couldn't help myself. I wasn't happy with my attempt at trying to replicate the Tim Holtz grip paste, which is the Crypt one. So I'm giving it another shot, and I just realized that perhaps I could color it with some of the oxide ink. So what I've done, quick recipe, very quick. 2 tablespoons of the wash sand. I've put 1 tablespoon of my tapioca flour, which I said, of course, you can use plaster of Paris, you can use corn flour, you can use baby powder as well. And then I just picked up, and it's an oxide ink refiller, which is forest moss, and I literally have just put 2 drops of forest moss into that mix, and then 1.5 tablespoons of the gel medium. Then I was like, well, how am I going to recreate those tiny little black dots? Because if you remember when we looked at the gel, it has these little black speckles. So I've given that a go as well, and what I've done is I decided that I would make some black sand, and I did tell you earlier that it is a possibility to do that, as long as you use a permanent ink on it to dye it. And so I just went, because it's right on my desk here, went with some StazOn Jet Black refill ink. Put 3 drops, I think I put in with this amount of sand, which is probably about a tablespoon of sand here. And I have well and truly palette knifed that through there. Remember, if you're doing this and you're using the StazOn ink, it's going to stain whatever you're working on. So don't use anything precious, because StazOn will StazOn everything. Okay, so anyway, so here's my mix of my sandy grit paste, and here's my black sand. So it's an experiment. We're still experimenting. I'm going to pull some this way, right here, and just sprinkle in a tiny little bit. And I'm really hoping that this black is just going to stay on the sand and not change the color of our paste. Oh, it's looking promising. Ooh, I'm excited. Oh my gosh. We may have done it. I think we need a bit more in there though. Yeah, so it's not affecting the color of the paste at all. Well, but we are getting a speckly effect. Oh my God, so excited. Oh my gosh, I think I've nailed it. I'm excited. All right, let's put some on this piece of board here and see. Oops, now I'm getting it everywhere. Lucky. We have got the same sort of texture. We have got speckles in there. Can you see the speckles? Maybe we need some more speckles. Maybe we need more of it in there. They stand out more. Certainly standing out more now because I've put so much in there. Let's try over this side. Well, there's a lot of speckles now. Okay, we've definitely got more speckles happening. So we have got a very gritty paste. If anything, it is probably a little bit too opaque to this one. This one does seem a bit more translucent, but that's an easy fix. You would just add more gel paste to get it more translucent. Let's try speeding it up, heating it with my gun here. All right, now I'm drying it. It's a bit more olivey and a little bit of yellow tone in there. But that's simply a case of changing the ink you use. So I use that forest moss, but perhaps it would have been better with like bundled sage. It's more to that tone. Yeah, I think perhaps not forest moss. Perhaps now that it's dried, it looks a little bit yellowy. Bundled sage might be better. But how great is it? I've worked out how to put those black specks in your grit paste, no matter whether you're doing it as an opaque paste or as a translucent paste. Just trying to make some room here. And I will I'll spread some onto our little sample thing here, so we see what it's like when it dries. So it's definitely got those speckles in there. It's not bad, it's just the colour's got too much yellow tone. But that's a simple fix with just selecting a different ink. And it may be a little bit too opaque, but we would just add some more. Where did I put it? We'll just add some more gel to make it a little bit more translucent. See if we put a bit more into that. Mix that in there. And put some on this side too. Ah, yeah, that's better. Look at that. Oops, I got it on my writing. Sorry about that. That writing's for that one. Yes. Looky, looky. Looky, looky, looky. This is pretty successful, guys. If you really need to make some grit paste that's more Tim Holtzy, this could be your answer. Let's just dry that and see. Alright, so definitely this one is more of the texture of the Tim Holtz one. The colour's just out. Just need something that's more, pulls a more green grey tone. The forest moss has got too much yellow tone in it. That's the first lot, which is too opaque. This one has more of the gel medium, which has made it more. So it still has the tapioca flower in there, but more gel medium, less tapioca flower. Not bad. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to put some, I use some with the stencil now because I've made all this, so I've got to use it up on something. And yeah, not a bad effort. I love that I worked out how to do the little flecky black sand through there. Pretty easy to do. Anyone could do it.